Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Concord Web Biotech's webinar on the use of liposomal amphotericin B in the management of kappa and mucormycosis. Today, we have with us Dr. Rahul Sharma, who is associated with Yatharth Super Speciality Hospital as the head of Department of Pulmonology, Critical Care and Sleep Medicine. Dr. Rahul is a gold medalist in DM, Pulmonary and Critical Care, and is a fellow of the American College of Chest Physicians, the National College of Chest Physicians, and the Indian Sleep Disorders Association. His areas of interest include general pulmonary medicine, critical care, interventional pulmonology, and sleep medicine. He has been a keen researcher and has around 40 publications indexed in national and international journals. He has received the Young Investigator Award from ICMR in 2014 and the Indian Chest Society in 2020. Dr. Rahul, welcome. We're immensely privileged to have you on this webinar, sir.
Thank you very much for the nice word and good evening, everyone. So what topic that has been assigned to me is very, very important, and probably just now we have seen 2 new cases of mucormycosis at our center. So probably we need to be a little careful, although the COVID is still, again, we are having very, very skeptical news about COVID, whether it will come, it will increase. The Omicron variant is there. But today I'll be talking about and focusing my talk on fungal infection, which include COVID-associated pulmonary aspergillosis and mucormycosis. So I think I'll start. My slides are visible, I hope.
Yes, doctor, they're visible. Yes.
Okay. So we know what is invasive fungal infection. So invasive fungal infection or invasive fungal disease, what we call, are the group of mycotic infection, and that is commonly prevailed in immunocompromised patients, most commonly seen as a referral patient, because most of these patients initially does not have fungal infection, but because of the disease or steroids or multiple antibiotics, these patients has this tendency of development of invasive fungal infection. And they are one of the major contributors to most of the morbidity and mortality across the world. Most of the ICUs where there are long-term patients, most of the risk factor which is associated with fungal infection, I'll be talking about. And when you talk about year 2002, the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer, which is the EORTC, and Infectious Disease Mycology Study Group have published a revised standard definition for invasive fungal infection. So directly diagnosing invasive fungal infection is very, very difficult. You need to have a very high index of suspicion when you are talking about any fungal infection, or for God's sake that you want to treat any patient of fungal infection, because it is not glaring at you every time. And if it is glaring at you, probably you are very, very late in managing such patients. So how do you keep a high index of suspicion? The first thing is that you need to keep a high eye on your high risk groups, which includes adult patient having candida colonization, uncontrolled diabetes, any kind of renal failure, patient on hemodialysis, patient who has acute severe pancreatitis and it takes longer time to resolve. Most of these patients are nil pyroluria and taking total parenteral nutrition. Patients who are sick in ICU, which you can assess with the help of Apache score. Prolonged mechanical ventilation, central venous or urinary catheter, which is again a very, very important source of fungal infection. Then you have prolonged stay in the ICU. You have broad spectrum antibiotics, which is commonly used in all the tertiary care center or in sick patients. Patients who are on parenteral nutrition, patients post major surgeries and burns are the patients who are at the highest risk of development of invasive fungal infection. And other 2 categories, most of us are very, very versed, and we usually have a very low threshold in starting antifungal. So the first group which we usually see as a physician, as an intensivist or as a pulmonologist is very, very important that I have mentioned. Organ transplantation and malignancy, we all know that the fever is not going, probably you have a very, very low threshold to start antifungals to such patients. So this is most of the time not a problem. The problem arises when you feel that your patient has no organ transplant, no malignancy, still the fever is there, or the patient is deteriorating and you need to decide whether the patient needs any kind of antifungal therapy or not. So I'll be talking a little bit about amphotericin B. So there are three formulations which is widely available in India, and probably we all are well versed with these therapy post-COVID when this surge of mucormycosis increase in India. So we have amphotericin B lipid complex, we have amphotericin B colloidal dispersion, and liposomal amphotericin B. So this lipid complex decides the efficacy, area under the curve, and overall side effect profile of these molecules. And when you look into the spectrum, probably amphotericin has the same spectrum whether you are using liposomal, lipid complex, or colloidal dispersion, but the side effect profile and the activity or the dosing may differ when you are using different lipid complex in these patients. But amphotericin is probably the broadest spectrum of antifungal that is most of the time we are reserved for the patient who are sick or who has severe invasive infection. Like if you talk about candida infection, the drug of choice are still echinocandin. When we talk about aspergillosis, the drug of choice is most of the time voriconazole. Now we have posaconazole also, but when we talk about mucormycosis, probably the drug of choice or the first line therapy in such patients is amphotericin B. Most of the time we are trying to decrease the toxicity because the cumulative dose is very, very high and patient has this tendency of development of dyslipidemias and kidney failure per se. So most of the time, everywhere in the world, this is a universal consensus that you use liposomal amphotericin B for such patients. As far as the aspergillosis is concerned, again, there are one or two species on which people presume that amphotericin will not work or they have some kind of resistance, which is Starius and Pseudosporium. But on other aspergillosis, probably it is again a broad spectrum antibiotic. But as I have said before, the triazoles are the drug of choice, whether it is voriconazole or posaconazole. And most of the time we are, if we are able to identify the spectrum or the species, then we are going for the targeted therapy in these patients. What is the mechanism of action of amphotericin B? It is binds to the sterol, which is an ergosterol in the fungal cell membrane of susceptible fungi, and resulting in the increase in permeability of the membrane of these cells, leading to leakage, intracellular component, leading to apoptosis and cell death. This is what the mechanism of action of amphotericin B, and it has an approved indication. Empirical therapy generally being used for the patient who presume to have neutropenia with febrile reactions, post-transplant patients, immunocompromised patients, for treatment of Cryptococcus meningitis, especially in patients who are living with HIV. This is the drug of choice. For the treatment of patient who has aspergillosis, candida, Cryptococcus, refractory to other therapies, amphotericin B is the drug of choice. And in patient where you are not able to accept the toxicity of amphotericin plain, you go for liposomal amphotericin B. Visceral leishmaniasis or CALAs are very, very rare nowadays, but it is again a drug of choice for this molecule. And the other important thing is mucormycosis. And this is basically the pharmacokinetics of these molecules when you are combining these molecules to lipid complex, colloidal dispersion or other form of lipid. It is basically the size of lipid molecule which decides the availability and the efficacy of amphotericin molecule along with the side effect profile. So as you see that the liposomal molecule had the diameter of 0.08, so it has the maximum Cmax and area under the curve, and it has a very, very little toxicity as compared to the molecule which has high size and where you are not able to add any lipid complex to this. This is called amphotericin deoxycholate. And again, the important thing is the dose is also defined on the basis of your lipid complex molecule. Like for deoxycholate, the dose is 0.5 to 1. For other lipid complex, it is 3 to 5. But if you have eye, sinus, or brain involvement, the dose can go up to 10 milligrams per kg body weight. So why there are different formulation, and how do you decide that which is the best molecule? So this is a simple table that you can, just mug up or just remember. Efficacy, all lipid formulation has better efficacy as compared to plain amphotericin deoxycholate. Nephrotoxicity, liposomal amphotericin B has the least toxic drug for your kidney as compared to amphotericin deoxycholate and other colloid and lipid complexes. Infusion-related toxicity again is very, very low, less with liposomal molecule, but the product cost is little bit high, but it can always be compensated when you are talking about organ-threatening reaction or life-threatening infusion-related toxicity. So more or less, most of the center are using lipid formulation nowadays as compared to plain amphotericin B. So let's talk about a little bit about aspergillosis. A lot of havoc has also been created by aspergillosis in COVID era, although we were all talking and listening about black fungus in most of the news as well as social media. But invasive aspergillosis can be as lethal as mucormycosis. So when you talk about number of patients, 56% of the aspergillosis affects your lung, followed by disseminated aspergillosis. Another part is affected to the tune of 5 to 10% in these patients. So COVID-associated aspergillosis is again an important aspect, which was called kappa, and it is defined as invasive pulmonary aspergillosis in the temporal proximity of a preceding SARS-CoV infection, in particular in patients with clinical symptoms that are compatible with COVID-19, and they are confirmed by COVID RT-PCR, of course, and who WHO developed, the patient who developed respiratory insufficiency requiring intensive care should be considered at high risk for CPAP. So patients, especially in COVID patients who were on long-term oxygen therapy, patient who was sick, having high CORAD score, patient who required long-term oxygen, ICU, ventilator, diabetic patient, cardiac profile patients. These are the patients who are at the highest risk of development of invasive pulmonary aspergillosis. And probably we all have realized whosoever is treating the patient in ICU. And again, the diagnosis is not very, very straightforward in most of the patients. You need to look into the histology, microbiology, clinical factors, imaging, and on the basis of this, you cumulatively decide whether your patient has probable, possible, or proven aspergillosis. The most important test that we were using during the aspergillosis is the IgG for aspergillosis. If it is positive, then most of the time the sensitivity is very, very high, so as the specificity. So these are the patients whom you should consider treating with antiviral like voriconazole for these patients. And this was the article in Lancet where Dr. Arunlok Chakrabarti was also there as a part of author of this, and it shows that the viral pneumonia increases patient susceptibility to bacterial and fungal infections, which is a super infection that we have all realized over a period of time. And these are the patients who are at the highest risk of development of invasive pulmonary aspergillosis. The increasing number of reports of COVID-associated aspergillosis, although it was somehow shadowed by mucormycosis in the news, but it is the white fungus that we were talking about is that aspergillosis, and it is equally difficult to treat, and most of these patients were suffering more with aspergillosis as compared to mucormycosis. The drug of choice is azole, voriconazole. Isavuconazole has been recently available in India, although the cost is very, very high. But these are the two molecules, and if you feel that your patient is sick enough and not responding to this therapy, liposomal amphotericin B is the last resort drug, and you can combine this with voriconazole or isavuconazole in these patients. The other dreaded fungus is mucormycosis. Probably we all are very, very educated about this, that it has a very, very high mortality. Every time in the news, advisories, government bodies, all of them has given some kind of clues that how do you define if you have, COVID, you are recovering from COVID-19, you have diabetes, you have used heavy steroid doses, a patient who are using humidified oxygen and not taking care of the hygiene of this. Then what are the signs? There are, so the most common areas which is affected by this fungus is your sinus, eye, brain, and lung. So if you have any symptoms which are related to this in terms of facial pain, new onset headache, nasal or sinus congestion, black lesion, bleeding from the nose, pain in the eye, loss of vision, all these were the warning symptoms that you should immediately report to the medical authorities and seek medical advice, because this can be very, very lethal. And we have realized that despite patients were a little reluctant, even a delay of 2 to 3 days leads to high mortality in such diseases. So it is a life-threatening invasive fungal disease due to Mucorale species, and it leads to clinical manifestation ranging from very minor symptoms of common cold to disseminated infection, depending on that which part of the body is it affecting. Pulmonary or disseminated disease are commonly found in immunosuppressed patients, but we do see a lot of lung mucormycosis in post-COVID era also, mostly for the patient who were using steroids during the recovery phase of COVID-19. And by saying that patients who are using steroids doesn't mean that the steroid that has been given to our patients were wrong, but probably that is the time when it is saving most of the lives. We know that steroid has a lot of side effects, but if you use it judiciously, most of the patients, it is probably the most important life-saving drug in COVID-19 as well as otherwise, because post mucormycosis surge that we have seen in COVID-19, people are very reluctant to take steroids. So of course, you should not take steroid. You should not start steroid as your own, being self-doctor. But yes, if your doctor is prescribing you, you can always ask your doctor the side effect versus benefit profile of the steroids. But if they are advising you, there is no harm. You need to be very careful regarding the monitoring part of the side effect profile of steroids. So this is why I'm saying this, because most of my patients are now very reluctant of taking steroid despite they are in the dire need. So not taking steroid also harms you as far as your primary disease is concerned. So this is very important that you always weigh risk versus benefit, because no drug in this world has absolutely zero side effects. But whenever it is necessary, probably steroids are also important part of medicine. So people who develop mucormycosis, irrespective of uncontrolled diabetes, sugar status, immunocompromised status, or other reasons, they have a very high morbidity and mortality. Liposomal amphotericin B remains the first line treatment, and we do see the crisis. And we were forced to use deoxycholate amphotericin B, which has again a side effect profile which is more severe than liposomal amphotericin B. But now the stocks are adequate in the market and there is no shortage. So we have again come back to liposomal amphotericin B. And treatment should be started as soon as you suspect the disease, because it is not necessary that every time you are able to make the diagnosis. And it is also not necessary that you are getting the same dose every day. So this is also important, that every time patient were using cumulative dose. So it is not that every day you need to get the 6 injection of this amphotericin B, but if you are getting 2, 3, 4, you can always look into the cumulative dose of amphotericin B. And so from suspicion to treatment, how do you suspect? You can suspect on the basis of the risk profile of the patient, radiological, clinical presentation. Then diagnosis are usually based on the judgment first. Then you can send serum PCR specimen from the infection site for PCR, pathology, culture, histopathology. And therapeutic emergency includes 2 parts. One is the treatment with liposomal amphotericin B, and the surgical drainage is equally important. It is not that liposomal amphotericin B will treat each and every patient. Wherever we feel or we presume that debridement or surgical drainage is required, it should be done immediately. Isavuconazole was also been tried in combination with amphotericin B, so as posaconazole. And there are some studies which shows that it has better effect as compared to liposomal amphotericin B monotherapy. So there are guidelines recommendation. We have Indian guidelines also along with that, how to give amphotericin B, because infusion of amphotericin B is also very important. It has to be given in dextrose solution. It has to be given slow. There should be a 1.2 micron filter which has to be used with this, and you need to monitor electrolytes and KFT and give good hydration to your patient. This is very important, and all these patients should be pre-medicated before giving amphotericin B, which most of the time is lacking and not being followed in most of the patients. So the take-home message is very simple. You need to keep a high index of suspicion. Early therapy. Do not wait for the final result to come, because most of the time, if you are treating mucormycosis, diagnosis takes a lot of time, and every day delay in the therapies increase the mortality of your patient. So it is very important keeping a high index early therapy, you can save a lot of life in your patient. Thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have any question, I'll be very, very happy to answer.
Yes, doctor. Thank you so much. That was great to have you speak about the topic. There are a few questions here that I would quickly want to bring to your attention. Mr. Kaushik Sinha would like to know, what about renal involvements with LAMP-B, liposomal amphotericin B, in case of mucormycosis?
There was some instability in the network, but I'm available. If you have any question, you can ask right now.
Yeah. So can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So there's a question that says, what about renal involvements in liposomal amphotericin B in case of mucormycosis?
Involvement as in? I didn't get the question.
Well, actually, it's only so much, so I'm not very clear about it. Okay, nonetheless, there's another question that says, can liposomal amphotericin be used in prophylaxis? If yes, in which type of conditions?
So there are certain conditions like post-transplant patients, patients who have immunocompromised state, patient of blood cancer, where amphotericin B can be used prophylactically, and there are guidelines available to this. Even for post-COVID status, when we were seeing that the patient has eye complaint, blurring of vision, MRI was not started that time. All the hospitals were doing just CT. Ophthalmologists were not pitched in. ENT surgeons were just preparing that if the cases will increase, then only we'll start doing surgeries. That time also we were using empirical amphotericin B to each and every patient whom we feel that they have a new symptoms, which is probably because of invasive fungal, and most of the time it was mucormycosis.
Okay. Okay. Right, doctor. I think that's the only question so far that we have. Yeah, it was great having you on the webinar. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Rahul.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.